Hello, everybody. My name is Randy Carroll. I'm the Strategic Partner and Channel Manager here at Chime Technologies. Thank you for taking some time to join us, whether it's here on Zoom or on Facebook. We appreciate you. I'm really excited about our guest today, about the topic today. I'm here with Frans from Belgium and PieSync, and we are talking about how what PieSync brings to the table is going to connect all the technology in your business. And this is something that is especially exciting for me because over 5 years ago, when I got into the real estate tech world, there was this concept, this kind of golden goose everyone was chasing after, which was the all-in-one solution, right? Something that could handle your lead generation, your CRM, your transaction management, and it's all in one place. Fast forward 5 years, I've come to realize that that is every bit as much of a fable as a golden goose itself, right? So PieSync has been around not just in real estate, but in other realms, connecting pieces of technology, helping create what is artificially an all-in-one solution due to their syncs. So I'm excited to demo PieSync here today with you, learn a little bit more about the company itself and what type of practical applications it may have in your business. So with that being said, I'm going to pitch it over to Frans here. And Frans, thank you. Give us a little background about PieSync.
Thanks, Randy, for having me. PieSync's indeed been around for well, almost 8 years now, and it started off really small as one little sync, a data sync between a CRM, high-rise CRM, and Google Contacts. That was like a niche need that we discovered on a forum. So we started out marketing a very small sync. But in doing so, we actually developed a sync that we realized, you know what, we can actually do this with other apps as well and really pull off an actual two-way sync, because that's, once you figured out that's part of the puzzle, you can actually start scaling things up. That's really the reason why a lot of integrations, even in 2020, are doing the job, but maybe not always, right? They pull in data, but they don't really allow you to make changes back. Mm-hmm. So in 2012, we started out relatively small, but it was in 2016, 2017 that we really noticed, you know what, real estate agents, those apps, those CRM apps, they're super contact centric. A lot of it gets stored on the contact record. So we had the habit of releasing a new app every week, and that would have been an accounting app, something that sends emails. But then we really started focusing on real estate apps, and we gathered some success with it. We started a partnership with Keller Williams, which of course accelerated things even more. So we got a fair amount of real estate centric CRMs, real estate marketing apps already in our portfolio of available connectors, and then we're super happy to finally have Chime.
As of the Chime integration, I believe the number is at 242, right?
242, and that number keeps on growing, and no one needs all 242 apps. Let's be honest, but it's really our focus on making sure that we have one, if not several apps that you are using today in your business, mm-hmm. that you will find, it's relevant to make sure that the data that sits in those apps finds its way into Chime, and mm-hmm. vice versa.
Mm-hmm. No, you bring up a good point. The term integration is a very ambiguous term, right?
I hate it.
and no integration is created equally, right? You can have a very shallow, very in-depth integration, and one of the pitfalls of integrations across the industry, as you've experienced, is that one-way type communication, mm-hmm. where there's no real-time updating back and forth. So PieSync is the solution for that, right?
It is. There's, a very common example of a one-way integration is Zapier. Zapier, it's actually a great integration which we use ourselves, and sometimes one way is exactly what you need. It's this idea of something happens in my one app, then I actually want Chime to take that contact and move it into another pipeline. something like that. That's a one-way type of integration, which works great. I think there's a lot of confusion around integrations when sometimes you actually do need a two-way integration. And rather than looking at events happening and triggering off certain scenarios, it's just about looking at the contact record. You've got John Doe living in Chime. Well, John Doe comes with a phone number, comes with an address, comes with tags, comes with all kinds of metadata attached to it. That data needs to also live in a potentially a different format in your marketing app. It needs to live in a different format on your phone. And it's about translating John Doe so that John Doe appears in all of your other apps. And that type of integration, we don't actually see it very often, and PieSync really fills up that need.
So I'm going to hit you with a hard one right off the bat here. You mentioned there's all this metadata that lives with John Doe. Now, very few of us are that techie. So help fill in the color of what metadata actually is.
It's around, well, I'm actually going to already jump in my my Chime here, so I don't.
Yeah, let's do it.
If I share the
metadata seems like it's one of those words that people say and they kind of have an innate gut feel, but they don't know how to define it.
It may be a Belgian thing as well, Randy. I mean, around metadata, it's about getting a contact has data attached to it, which could be a phone number, an email, but it also has things like source. Essentially, the whole left bar here, that doesn't always translate well into another platform. If you start exporting or importing data into Chime, you're just going to think about the essentials, like, okay, name, email, that's it. But there's lots more that makes up a contact. And if you think of Chime and you start thinking about the other apps that potentially this person, he happens to be my boss, sits in, like, Ewout, is he eligible to receive newsletters that I would send him through Mailchimp? Or did we get to meet Ewout because he visited an open house a while ago? Like, there's lots of history or data that is relevant to Ewout that doesn't sit in Chime yet because it sits in other apps. Or, like, how do you get that moved over in and out of Chime? That's really what PieSync tries to solve.
Love that. That's awesome. Yeah, metadata is like the personality or the color, if you will, that fills in the name, email, phone number,
groups. Yeah,
perfect. So show us PieSync and show us some common use cases that Chime clients are using today.
Happy to. In fact, here's the cool thing. So this integration with Chime's been around since a couple of weeks now. We already knew for a while that we had folks in our common user base that were really interested to have this integration, right? So that's one of the main reasons why we built it. And on the basis of that, we're already seeing several users setting up their syncs between Chime and the other apps that they're using. So this is my PieSync environment, and just a quick way to fire up PieSync. You would go to settings, you would go to integrations, and we are right here underneath. Zapier is an independent integration, so you can open up PieSync through here. If you don't yet have an account, it's just going to guide you into creating that account. It's relatively easy. Now, I've already gone in and done that, and I've already started prepping some sync connections. Now, by no means do we expect users to be setting up integrations to all of these apps. Would be good if you did, but that's I'm kind of presenting like the wide variety of possibilities. These are, Randy, you mentioned 241 apps. You've been keeping count better than I have. So these are just a selection that I've made, and I want to go a couple of examples. So I'm seeing Icloud here. I've actually had a sync running actively with Google Contacts, and I want to start off with that one because it's probably one of the most common apps that we have. We don't even think about it as an app. Google Contacts, it sits attached to a Gmail account. If you don't have Gmail, but you are working in Outlook, you have Outlook people. If you still have something else, well, you may have Icloud Contacts. It's this native address book that you can access on the web, but more importantly, it's what makes up the telephone book on your phone. And this, a lot of folks that are perhaps not yet using a CRM that actively, they start off by really catering for their Google contacts. So they would have an address book in Google Contacts, really like built out, giving people labels, adding all kinds of data here. And sure enough, you can actually import your Google Contacts if you use this integration here built into Chime. But what if you're constantly working in Google Contacts, you're constantly making little changes on your phone? That's where you want a continuous two-way sync, and that's what PieSync is about. So let me just jump in the actual configuration screen of PieSync so you can see what this is doing. It's the two arrows show what it is. It's a two-way sync. You can actually make it a one-way sync if you're kind of wary of making unknown changes, but most people do set it up as a two-way sync. And you control the sync. It's not this invisible, let's hit a button and wait what happens. No, it's up to you to say clearly, you know what, in my Google Contacts, I have these and these and these contacts. In fact, I have a couple of contacts that I've given the label buyers. I may have some other contacts that I've given a label, let's say business. Those are the contacts that I want synced with Chime. Conversely, you know what, actually I do have some contacts in Chime as well. Let's also make sure that they make their way into Google Contacts. Rules
let's talk about these rules. Yeah, I'd love to hear more about the rules and their flexibility.
It's around making sure that, well, you're not getting all of your Google Contacts into Chime, because maybe you don't need all of that. Maybe you don't need your entire database be equal. Maybe in Chime you have like tens and tens of thousands of leads. Good on you, but maybe you don't need all those tens of thousands of contacts on your phone. Conversely, I mean, my wife sits in my phone. I don't need her in Chime. So it's about applying these labels, filters, but then as I've built out filters in my Google Contacts, that makes me think of, you know what, the people that I've labeled as a buyer in Google Contacts, they probably need to translate to more than just a phone number along with a first and last name in Chime. No, I can actually have some metadata, there you go, go along with it, right? So if I've been going through the trouble of labeling folks as buyers while I was on the go on my phone, and of course you could do this with the Chime mobile app, but in this case, I'm actually not using the mobile app. I'm using it natively on my phone. Well, what does that translate to in Chime? So if I'm labeling them as buyers, I want the lead type in Chime to be also set to buyer. But I could be doing a number of things. If you don't really work with the lead type property or field, I don't know how you would call them, you could apply tags, add them to groups. Maybe you want to actually make sure that they're getting assigned to you, to you as an agent. There's a variety of actions that you can be applying according to how a contact behaves in your Google Contacts.
How interesting is that? There you go. You can update their pipelines. You can assign the agent. You can assign the tags. All of that directly from the get-go.
Yeah, and the interesting thing is, like this is clearly showing the difference between a almost flat interface of Google Contacts, which a lot of folks, a lot of agents we know are using initially Google Contacts as their CRM, right? It's this flat database, it's your Rolodex, but with labels that really lack that hierarchy, that deep hierarchy that Chime offers you, right? That this is like what blows people's minds as they move from Google Contacts into an environment like Chime, where all of a sudden they can not only use labels, which are tags, but then also apply some depth in that with groups, move people into stages, into pipelines. It's in fact, oftentimes when people are moving from Google Contacts into an environment like Chime, where they realize that they had an enormous, super long list of labels that covered super minimalistic things around folks, along with major distinctions between like buyers and sellers. So when people outgrow Google Contacts, right, they will move into a CRM, but they will still need that two-way sync. So you can have these labels talk two-way with how you are actually dressing up your Chime.
And what I think is important to point out here is that in this industry, there's a lot of pain around learning new behaviors, right? So if you're totally satisfied with working in Google Contacts, but you know that you need a CRM for some of its other versatile options, like what Chime brings to the table, you can continue to keep some of the behaviors that aren't hurting you, right? Like using Google Contacts, and then implement Chime and have them constantly speaking back and forth, right? But until Google comes up with a IDX property search site for you, you're probably going to need to keep using Chime for that, right? And various other features. So
there's some cool little things that Google already does. Like as soon as you email somebody or somebody sends you an email and you were to reply, they would automatically create a contact for that record. So with this sync running, that contact, it would just make sure that that contact then also exists in Chime. And it does some other cool things, right? Because it does this two-way sync, you can see in field mapping, there's lots of information that can go back and forth. The one cool thing that this will apply is it will enable this thing called caller ID, because maybe you are actively working in Chime, and as you're creating new contacts or contacts find their way to Chime, because there's various ways, right, that contacts can start entering Chime because of all the different sources. This sync will make sure that they, without you even hitting a button, they end up on your phone. So folks would be filling out a lead ad, leaving their phone number. If they end up calling you, your phone will actually show the caller ID of that person, because this sync in the background has made sure that that contact, even though they fill out a form on your website, it will actually make sure that your phone says it's Randy Carroll calling you, and that's pretty cool. Also, if you're like, if you happen to know that Randy Carroll filled out your form and you're in your car and you want to talk to Siri and you want to say, hey Siri, call Randy Carroll, right? Unless I'm mistaken, I don't think the mobile app has that voice recognition yet, but Siri does. So if I'm asking Siri, hey, call Randy Carroll, because Randy Carroll, sure enough, will be sitting in my phone book. It's those subtle things that really make PieSync like one of those powerful apps that you've got to try out to really experience the full power.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So let's take the next step down the path of the lead life cycle. We've created the lead. They exist now in both. They're getting updated in both. Let's discuss what type of functionality BombBomb and Mailchimp are going to bring to the table in terms of marketing and what role they play. Uh-oh. Can't hear you.
Oh, sorry, I accidentally hit the mute button on my headphones. Even though you can't really see it from here, but imagine every software bundle. It's like a software stack. So you would have Chime sitting in the middle. It's really the centerpiece of all of the software that you're using. And then it's, simplistically speaking, there's leads coming in and there's contacts coming in. There needs to go contacts out of Chime. I mean, you get an app like Mailchimp or BombBomb, which you can set up landing pages to pull leads in, along with Facebook lead ads, for instance. But then you also can leverage those pieces of software to send out blasts. I mean, you can individually send out an email, and you would do that out of Chime. This is more about, what if you have these drip campaigns, or like a weekly or a monthly newsletter like France's real estate picks or whatnot, and you're using dedicated software like Mailchimp to be setting that up. Again, it's two databases. You've got your Chime database, and then you've got Mailchimp, which is doing great into creating your templates and sending out beautifully crafted emails. But it also needs an address book. It needs an audience. It actually works off the name audience. But you need to segment it, right? You've got all of those nuances lying in Chime that you need to carry over into Mailchimp so that the audience, the individual recipient, will get the newsletter that is made for him or her. And then, so you need to carry over the details, and those are different. That's the beautiful thing around those connection rules again, because we know that people will be using Chime in slightly different ways from one another, just the same way as we know that people will be using Mailchimp in different ways from one another. Here's just my sandbox of a Mailchimp, but you could be managing your contacts in your audience in again, groups, segments, tags. Sounds familiar, right? You got your
Right.
you got groups, you got tags as well, but like groups in Mailchimp, I don't think they translate the same way as they would in Chime. So you've got these different segmentation strategies almost that you want to link up with one another. So imagine I'm using Mailchimp and I've got Mailchimp on my website, and on Mailchimp I would be not only asking people to like register, I would be asking them a question. The very typical question would be, are you looking to buy or sell? Buy, sell. So not only do I want to fetch, I mean, that's the bare bones need of an integration. I want the people who fill out the form to be going into Chime. Great. That's what PieSync will do, definitely. But it can do more than that, right? It's about making sure that the people who are saying that their intent is to buy, you're not only putting them in Chime, but you're making sure that, well, how are you using it? How do you want to register this intent? You probably want to update their lead type with a buyer. You probably also want to update the source if they didn't exist yet. Let's make sure that you can at the end of the day, if you want to do like month by month reporting over in Chime, which Chime is great at, you want to do your monthly views, like what's our funnel looking like? Well, update the source, because you want to make sure that people who fill out this particular form are being assigned to either this agent, or you let the Chime routing engine do its work based on another property. So this rule engine really puts you in the driver's seat as to how you want this integration to behave. So it requires a little bit of thinking on the user's end, but we found that this is really how most integrations should behave, rather than just hitting a button like, oh yeah, magically link it up, and then you don't really get to see or understand how the data moves from left to right. So this, we hope folks like getting this control.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's because people will first ask for an integration, and when that's what they ask for. They ask for the integration, but they don't tell us how they want things to be integrated, or what rules, or what to include, what not to include. You get to make your own rules. Like, you're in control of your business, and PieSync isn't syncing it to Chime without you first deciding this is how you want it to work together.
But a nice thing that I do want to point out is that even if you're thinking of like, oh, darn, I had to probably set up this rule as well, and you're thinking of that way after the fact, that's fine. Like, you can make these changes once the sync is already running. So imagine you're just letting the sync run in the default vanilla setup, because this you get these two rules for free. That's fine. You would be getting that bare bones integration. Contacts would be moving in, contacts would be moving out. And if then after a month or so you're saying, well, in fact, we've been starting to ask this question on the Mailchimp form about whether they want to buy or sell, you know what? Go into PieSync and you can apply that rule, and it will kind of pick it up and even correct retroactively. It's like this living and breathing thing. That's actually different from, say, something like Zapier, right? Where you constantly have to be thinking of, okay, I'm procedurally setting up this scenario where if this happens, then this should happen. So whatever has happened in the past, well, yeah, the integration was running differently back then. No, this is really saying if a lead's in Chime and it acts or behaves this way, this is what they should look like in Mailchimp, and vice versa.
So explain what the alternative is. If you decide, you know what, I don't want to do PieSync, what do you have to do to get Chime and Mailchimp to work together is a
I
lot
mean,
more effort, right?
yeah,
I mean,
typically it's, and this is what a lot of people do because they sometimes, yeah, accept to live with the pain because they only have to endure it maybe once a month. It would be, well, you take your contacts and you would export them because Mailchimp, sure enough, has this ability to import contacts, right? You can throw in a CSV or throw in the data file that you've taken out of Chime, and it will update. So even if you're uploading the same file as you've done last month, it will recognize, okay, this is a new contact. It will do that, but it's a pain, and a lot of the times people will actually not transfer all information because it's hard. You have to translate those specific like groups and tags. They don't always translate as nicely as you could with like a very user interface. You would literally have to do it in Excel. I mean, I don't like to spend my times in Excel, right? Massaging an Excel file before one or the other system is going to be happy to take it in. I don't like that.
No, that's a lot of work. That's a lot of work. So what I find interesting as well here is that you've got Eventbrite as one of the examples. Not that there's very many in-person events these days, but eventually we're going to move forward to where that's a thing again. So how does Eventbrite play a role here?
It's similar to some functionality that you have inside of Chime, right? It's around lead capture. You guys already have a bunch of sources. I guess what PieSync's role here is that it just adds another whole array of extra sources without having the Chime developers having to worry about it. So we're now making sure that other things like Eventbrite is part of that. There's actually a bunch of other apps as well. I'm just using Eventbrite. Now, this interestingly is going to be a one-way sync by default. So as you notice here, PieSync is really powerful in doing a two-way sync. It can write as well as read data. Eventbrite, we can't really create an attendee. An attendee just shows up or they don't. So this is a forced one-way sync.
Okay.
But even then, it's going to come back with the same setup as you've seen in the other rules that were a two-way sync. It comes with rules and field mappings. Rules to define, do I want all of the folks that sit in Eventbrite or only the ones that attended this event or only even the ones that actually came to my event and checked in? Do I want to cancel out other attendees? And more so than that, once they get into Chime, what should their data look like? Giving you that control. So updating the source. So if it was a certain open house that took place on a certain date, you want to attach that data to it. If you're using groups, if again you're using tags, if you're using custom properties, right, custom fields in Chime where you would want to store that type of information, you can make sure that those rules carry it over.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. Now, when you consider the all-in-one solution, we've done some of the lead generation, some of the marketing. The Chime fills the role of the CRM.
Yeah.
What do you have in terms of transaction management? I see dot loop there.
Yeah.
Brokerman. What other?
That dot loop command is actually the tool that all Keller Williams agents need to use as a CRM that they get. So that's their system of record where they also have to record their opportunities. Let's jump into the Chime dot loop sync, which is again a very straightforward sync. It's a sync with the address book. I need to point out, and it's worth pointing out that there is a dot loop integration built into Chime. It sits there, and what this integration does, so the one built by Chime, it makes sure that once you're working on preparing a transaction in Chime, it can export it. So it can move that data from that transaction into dot loop. That's great. That's functionality that PieSync is not offering. But what PieSync is doing that this integration does not is it's that constant background sync, because sure enough, data is prone to change constantly. It's the data doesn't just live in that one transaction, that one, or loop, as .loop likes to call it. People move. People move. People's contact data change. Their email address changes. It changes all of the time. Not constantly, but if you have a large enough database, it becomes really messy over time. And PieSync, having these two systems, Chime and .loop, along with the address book and the field mapping that comes with it, constantly talk two-way with one another without you having to worry about it. That's the power of PieSync. It just sits, runs there in the background, and it makes those changes. Those minute changes make sure that your database is up to date all the time, regardless of when you're making a change in .loop, whether the actual customer is making the change in .loop, because they could do that as well. Those changes will sync back into Chime as well as the other way around.
So let me ask you this. If I have Google Contacts, Chime, and .loop, and Mailchimp and Command,
I like this. I like where you're getting. Yeah.
If I change the contact information in Google Contacts, is it then going to change the contact information?
If it's the same contact, it is, right? If I'm making now, in my setup here, I've only got Google actively running. But if I were to activate right about this sync, you got it, right? Chime sits at the center, right? I'm making a change on Randy Carroll's contact record on my phone. Say I'm adding a phone number. That sync, this sync here, will pick you up. I can view in the history log where it's picking up on that change. But obviously, then Chime has this detected the change on the contact of Randy Carroll. Sure enough, the other sync will pick it up, right? It's actually a real-time sync, which means here's the truth, Mom. It's only every 5 minutes. So every 5 minutes we pull for changes. But sure enough, we will detect, oh, hey, look at that, Randy changed here. So we will then propagate that change that happened on Randy Carroll in Chime, and we'll sync it over to .loop. So in probably less than 10 minutes, because it's going to piggyback over the different apps, and we're actually working on making sure that that delay is minimized. But yeah, sure enough, it's changed. Randy Carroll will look exactly the same across all of these apps, in fact.
So that you're changing my contact record in one place and it updates in 5 or 6 places altogether. I mean, that is so helpful. I mean, consider the clients you have and how many different records you have for them across all your different platforms. Being able to have them updated in one place, trickle down through the rest, that is effectively achieving the concept of the all-in-one solution.
It is, right? It's making sure that address book, that, I mean, the most complete view that you could have of your contact database sits in Chime. This is the most holistic. This is the most beautiful holistic view that you can have. But the software that you're using doesn't always allow you to take in all of those nuances. But PieSync gives you that instrument that says, all right, the people that I happen to give a label of, or a tag called weekly newsletter, right? If I'm tagging them with weekly newsletter, I know for sure that they're going to be getting that weekly newsletter in Mailchimp, because I've actually defined a rule.
That's huge.
Yeah. It's about, I sometimes think of the word of like the concept of remote controlling. So you're remote controlling Mailchimp by by adding certain people in a tag or putting them in a certain group. That suddenly changes their behavior in Mailchimp or in BombBomb. It's like remote controlling your apps through Chime almost.
Yeah, no, I mean, this is wildly powerful. Basically what happened 5 years ago when I got into this space, technology was behind. Technology in the real estate space was behind. I think everyone would agree. If you don't, then we'll take that conversation offline. But so that's why this all-in-one concept was so desired, right? Because there wasn't a lot of competition. So what happened was there's a few players that entered the space. They claimed to fill this all-in-one role, but didn't necessarily realize how specialized each aspect of the real estate business is. And the result was a refracturing or resplintering of services to specialize in a specific niche, right? And some technologies, some services are doing better than others. And so what you're able to do with PieSync is now review all the various services out there, figure out which one is best of breed or the one that makes the most sense in your head, and then you can piece them together with PieSync without it being a broken Frankenstein monster. I mean, this is because that's what a lot of people are going to be concerned about. But what happens is through PieSync is you're perfectly sealing these programs together, giving you effectively the all-in-one solution that people are looking for.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, I had a webinar last week with one of the number one team in Phoenix. They did hundreds of millions of dollars in business, and one of the partners there says he has a dream that this all-in-one solution will exist, and maybe one day it will. It doesn't today, but PieSync makes that a possibility.
One of the use cases that I've liked, another agent give a testimonial about is that they were a growing team of agents, and as agents even switch from one team to the other, they bring along with them, right, their legacy database, and oftentimes that legacy database may sit in sometimes a Google Contacts, but if they've kind of matured out of Google Contacts, it may actually sit in a .loop database. It may sit in a say a follow-up boss database. It may sit in like other CRMs, and the ease of use that you can get out of PieSync in just like setting up those things, translating like, oh yeah, so you've been using those tags in your previous system, right? In fact, here in where we use Chime here, we're actually that translates to tags and to groups and into pipelines. Boom, 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 click, click, click. You can like onboard a new agent in just a matter of minutes, right? Without having putting the onus on them to like take their database and massage it in Excel and make sure it aligns neatly. No, you can just use your PieSync license to take that information, translate it, and just bring it in, and have them still use their legacy system for a while, right? They don't have to like pull the plug. No, it's about letting them use it because PieSync runs on the background. And then as time is ripe and all of the data starts living in Chime, you can just pull the plug.
So for all of you top producer clients out there who've had your top producer account for 15 years because you have so many people in there and it's so inexpensive and you've been unwilling to make the move because of the frustration, you can now get your top producer folks into Chime through PieSync without losing that data.
Or Brevity or Line Desk. Okay.
Yeah, sure. I don't mean to pick on top producer. I've just heard that so many times. Yeah, Chime's my main CRM. I've had this top producer for 20 years, and it's $29 a month, so I just keep it and don't do anything with it. Whoops. Anyways, yeah, very cool. So, unless there's any other applications you'd like to use an example.
We've covered it. We've covered most of it. Now, like, I'm not even actually addressed this best of breed thing. Yeah, Mojo Dialer is something that we're seeing certain Chime users be syncing up to, like because there is a Chime dialer, but if for some reason, you happen to like Mojo Dialer as well, it's not obviously going to work as smoothly, I should add, as doing it all within Chime. I mean, there's some compromise, but you're actually getting the ability to be using both systems in tandem, running on the same database, right? But you'll have to use PieSync to tell, you know what, the groups or Mojo has also a thing called calling lists. Well, what do you want those to be translated into Chime for? So if you want to remote control your Mojo, this button won't do it because that's a Chime dialer. But you could be setting up rules where, okay, if I'm adding them into a group, which I'm calling Mojo, right?
Sure.
And then on the back end of that, I'm actually having PieSync listen to folks sitting in that group. They would be then being added into Mojo in the right space. So I can just open up Mojo and start dialing those folks. So it's the use case of PieSync is like super different according to the app you're
Sure.
using, but how you set it up is always the same. It's like defining, what do I want in Chime? How do I want those folks to appear in my other app?
Mm-hmm. And what I also like is the fact that it's not an all or nothing type scenario where you have to get every single contact.
Yeah.
You can pick the very specific contacts that you want. I think that's probably an underrated or often overlooked aspect of this functionality here. So do two things for me. Talk to me about the pricing about PieSync and how people can learn more and contact you.
We operate on a trial model, right? So the technology is out there. Anybody can go ahead and try it out. You can go to piesync.com, sign up for free. It will open up a 14-day trial. We then, after those 14 days, we won't delete your data. They just won't be in sync anymore. So if you want to continue on after those 14 days, we offer two brands of PieSync. There's the starter and the pro one. So starter is for a simple sync that really doesn't involve any of those complex rules. Mm-hmm. It's when it is the all or nothing, which is quite often the case for like a phone sync. You know what, the contacts that sit in Chime on my name, I want all of those just on my phone. That's a starter sync. If you're thinking of syncing Mailchimp and along with custom fields and the questions and answers on a form, you want to sync those up with Chime, you're going to be looking at the pro. So it's either $10 a month or $50 a month. Mm-hmm. And then depending on the size of not the size of your database, but the size of how much contacts PieSync is actively keeping in sync, there's sort of a sliding scale on this. Okay. Which is again, you can go to piesync.com/pricing to figure out what that integration cost may end up looking like. Mm-hmm. This is not a per user cost, I should point out. It's like the integration costs will cost this much.
And what I want to point out here is this is not the number of syncs that you use, right? No. One contact could have 100 syncs over the course of a month.
Yeah, we're looking at. Yeah, a contact could indeed change 1 million times, which in the case of Zapier, you would have to end up paying for 1 million tasks to be executed. We don't care. It's about how many contact points should PieSync be looking at. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So if I have a database of 1,000 people that I'm looking at a $9 a month or $49 a month.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
That's it.
Perfect. I mean, that's great. That makes a lot of sense, because when you have the pricing based off of number of syncs, that can, first of all, as a client, as a realtor, for me, that's hard for me to control. Mm-hmm. And pricing can get out of hand pretty quickly in that regard.
And then you're constantly in control as well within PieSync, right? If you don't need, we actually encourage folks not to sync everything. Because you don't always need every database synced. I mean, you don't have to sync just for the sake of it. You have to sync in a conscious way. It's perhaps almost a European thing, if I might add. You don't want to like send anybody into Mailchimp, right? Think about who you want to send into particular pieces of your software stack.
Mm-hmm. I like it. Well, we'll wrap up a little early here. What else do we need to know, and how do we get in touch with you?
We would love for folks, to just try out as lots of folks already have done. So you can go ahead, go to piesync.com, or even go to piesync.com/Chime if you want to actually have a look at the different applications. So 241, you said, you can actually see all of them right here. You can search for them. And this is also the page through which you can immediately sign up for PieSync, either by logging in with Google immediately or with email. In fact, we have the ability to also log in using like another, like if you have a HubSpot account, you can log in with HubSpot. Like you can use your native accounts as well. And if you want to get in touch, well, we have a live chat here. You can book a call with us. In fact, once you're in the app, that live chat sits there as well. You can go ahead and ask us any kind of questions.
Very cool.
Yep.
Well, friends, thanks so much for your time today. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for the questions. Thanks for having me.
No, it's my pleasure. I just think this is such a powerful opportunity to have all the solutions that are running in your business finally work together nicely. So that's all I got for today.
Have a good one. Thanks.
Awesome. Y'all take it easy. Bye.